You know what they say? They say you got to talk about it. So I'm gonna tell the audience here. You guys are gonna be my therapist today. I know we're skipping the intro. Do you want to get the intro, Tim, or you just want me to jump into it right now?
We could start there, but let's do the normal one. What's up, Nerdy Bunch audience, Nerdie Sports audience? Welcome back to another podcast. I'm your host, Tim. Joining me as always is my best friend, Scotty,
What's up?
a
Best
big
friend
Giants
status.
fan. And that's exactly where I want to start off today. So how you doing, Scotty? Let's talk about your G-Man.
Honestly, I was having a good day up until in the pre-meeting. So to say our pre-call, Tim's like, we're gonna talk about the Giants a lot, and it's like my mood just went all the way down. But no,
Well, they
my
have the
brother.
third pick in the draft.
Yes.
They could potentially get a third quarterback because they signed Jameis Winston at first, who's going to
Mhm.
get paid $3 million this year. And then all of a sudden they're like, let's just get Russell Wilson on a 1 year. It's going to be $11 million for him. So they're
Wow.
spending $14 million for their quarterback. So pretty good deal there.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget
But
they
how do you
actually
feel about this?
technically I signed Tommy DeVito first, so they have three already on their
That's
roster.
true. He's getting $1 million. So
But
15 million for those three guys. But if you draft a quarterback, that's why I don't think they draft Shador. Do you have any idea what the NFL draft? We're 3 weeks away. How do you feel
well,
about their draft?
with the Giants, you never know. So I definitely wouldn't say I have any feeling to this. I guess it looks like they're gonna go Travis Hunter. They do have a desperate need at corner. He's the number one corner on the board. If you're lucky, you can get a star right out of the gate. Like that can happen. You look at Patrick Stan, Sauce Gardner. Like it's not crazy uncommon to get a star right off the bat. That's what's great about the NFL draft compared to a lot of other sports. You can draft, plug and play, boom, game changers. So that would be great for the defense. But I do want them to draft Shador. I'd like another quarterback. Fill the room up. I think you can never have too many quarterbacks. You know,
That's true.
and if they do, you mentioned like Jameis Winston's got like 3 million on the book. It's like money
Yeah,
is
for
not
this year.
none of these contracts are that punitive, so you don't have to worry about it.
No,
And
that's
then you get the rookie scale quarterback, which is like the cheat code of the NFL. If you want to do good, you get the rookie quarterback, and you can just stack the roster. So, as a Giants fan, I feel like I want the quarterback. We've been suffering, and I want to see good quarterback play more than I want to see us win. I don't care if we went, 0-16, but we were scoring 28 points a game. I'd be happy. I'd be happy with that because
They're
we've
not
been,
winning the Super Bowl this year, so just make
yeah,
it fun.
yeah, exactly. Give the fans some enjoyment. Like we've been suffering for, oh my God, really since Eli left, and even his last couple of years weren't great, but at least it was Eli, so it was the Hall of Famer, so to say, or future Hall of Famer, hopefully that you like look up to. So there was that there, but his last couple of years weren't great. Then we had the Daniel Jones debacle. So like we got to have something. And I'm feeling pretty positive on Shador. I understand people are saying if he was drafted in last year's draft, he would be like 6 or 7 on the board because last year's draft was just a much better quarterback grade. But let's not force ourselves. Drafting quarterbacks is not a good science. Like there's a lot of randomness. Yeah, sometimes you have quarterbacks that come out and it's obvious, but more than not, it's the quarterbacks that you're not sure about. A lot of small school quarterbacks end up being a lot of amazing. A lot of times, it's not the number one overall pick quarterback that ends up being amazing. So yeah, if you're saying, well, Shador is graded out as number two this year, and I understand it's a weaker draft, but just the last 2 years, the number two quarterback has been the better quarterback. So you just don't know with these things. You look at Caleb Williams, and I do think he'll be better. But last year, he's everybody's consensus number one. Jaden Daniels has a better year. And then you go back with CJ Stroud. He comes out number two overall, comes out like gangbusters, as I think arguably the best rookie year. You could argue statistically the best rookie year ever. And you could argue that was passed by Jay Nails. Those are both number two overall quarterbacks. So if quarterback drafting was so accurate, how is it that a lot of times the number two or even third quarterback drafted ends up being the best one?
Yeah, we're looking for different things. I mean, Colorado was, I think, 1-11, and they got blown out every game before, Sanders and his father and Travis Hunter came to the team. Then all of a sudden, look, you're adding Travis Hunter, who's arguably the best player in the draft.
Yeah.
Him and Abdul Carter. That's the conversation I keep hearing between those two guys. Who's the best player in the draft? But either way, you're getting one of the best players in college football, plus Sanders, plus a good coach. Then all of a sudden, they're a, reputable team. They're a team that you gotta at least game plan against. Having a guy that's in Colorado, not in a Michigan, not in Ohio State, not in Alabama, he can actually prove that he could take chaos and create something with that. And that's often what you have to do as a first round pick. But I was listening to Todd McShay's show today. He just released his top 150.
Okay.
And originally, like I think 2 weeks ago, he had him projected at three, Sanders. But right now, Sanders over under is around like 8.5. So
Hmm.
like the ninth pick is the Saints. So a lot of people
Okay.
are projecting maybe he goes there. Todd McShay had him going 19th. They had the Giants getting defensive lineman Mason Graham from Michigan, interior defensive tackle,
Okay.
which I'm big on, as an Eagles fan, as a just football fan. I think you start with the line and you work your way out there. If you compare the Giants losing Daniel Jones, the Colts are going to pay him 14.5 million. We just broke down between Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito. That's $15
Mhm.
million right there. So I
Yeah.
think that's a win. Are you at least happier with the loss of Jones and the addition of those three guys?
Yes. I mean, and it's like nothing against Jones, to say, but at this point, it had gotten to the point where unless he had this just crazy renaissance of a season, like the fan to turn on, the community, so to say, like the locker room, basically, like so. Even if you have somebody play the same as Jones quality next year, I feel like it will still looks favorable by comparison, and especially because Jones had arguably he's the poster boy for one of the worst contracts, not the worst, that's the Deshaun Watson, but like it's up there as pretty bad contract. So I feel like that was just causing a level of toxicity. I want to say I don't know if I go that far because sometimes just off the field stuff, and he was fine as far as that goes, but I feel like he had to kind of go. You had to clean, rip the page on that one and move on to the next, even no matter what the next results were, just for good faith to the fans of like we're trying because you could fail, but when fans get really upset is when you stop trying. That's when we get upset. And that's all the more reason why I think that we have to draft a quarterback because if we don't, we're basically mailing in the season. We're already saying we're giving up on this one. Outside of maybe if you get Winston, that could be great to win your fantasy football league if you get Malik Neighbors. Like I think he could put up some monster stats with him, but we're not winning any real games. So to me, you have to draft a quarterback to let the fans know that they're being heard. Like these fans are they're still who runs they're your boss, if you will. It's like you got vice president, president, CEO, and then the boss of that is the customer. That's the fan. Like the fans are saying we need quarterback change. So I think you have to address that. Let them know you're listening.
And speaking of quarterbacks, the Pittsburgh Steelers really, literally have nobody right now.
Yes.
They have to draft somebody. Right now, they have Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson on their books. That's only $4 million between those two. And they got rid of Russell Wilson and they got rid of who the Jets get? The quarterback, their main guy
Justin
from
Fields.
Ohio State.
Yes,
Yeah,
Justin Fields.
thank you. Justin Fields. So they lost both those guys. And if you look at the quarterback breakdown, you can come. There you go, Pitt. If you look at the quarterback breakdown, nobody has a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Nobody. Like it's so rare. So at least the Giants have Jameis Winston, who's going to be one of the best backups. Unfortunately, they don't have an elite starter. But the funniest thing, I felt like people were so excited for Jameis Winston, but then all of a sudden the Russell Wilson signing came and they're like, oh, look at the Giants. Look at them go again.
Hmm.
So were you different with that? How do you feel about those?
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of Russell Wilson signing. Honestly, I'd rather Jameis. And I know you can make an argument that Wilson was definitely probably better, but I saw a glimpse with Jameis. He's also younger. Like Russell Wilson is getting older and deteriorating with age, and it's not even you can't make the Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers always coming off an injury. He's just deteriorating. So you can imagine if you're gonna do 10% less than last year, that it's gonna be a floating season where you're hoping for maybe 6 wins or whatever. And if
Okay.
I'm the Giants, if I don't draft a quarterback, then I want to bottom out so I could draft Archie Manning next year. If you don't get a quarterback this year, I'd rather just bottom out. What I don't want, to me, the worst case scenario is Russell Wilson plays uh, better than expected, and we get like 8 wins because now we're sitting in a situation where we're basically more like Pittsburgh, where it's like next Pittsburgh, no quarterback, but they have a high draft pick, a low draft pick, like high and higher up. So that's like purgatory. They got nothing. They can't draft. They have no quarterbacks. The free agent market is dried up. They're begging Aaron Rodgers at this point, which it's almost getting embarrassing. And their pick is so far up there. I think they're what are they 20 or something? They are 21. They are in no win situation. They're
That's
too
fair.
good to draft a quarterback. And even if they play Mason Rudolph, they'll win because of Mike Tomlin. They'll win like 6 or 7 games, enough that they'll be drafting maybe 10th or something. Again, they won't be able to draft a good quarterback, and they're in that perpetual cycle. So that's what I don't want. As much as it sucks to lose, bottom out and say, okay, this year's quarterback class is so bad that you got to go somewhere else. Draft Travis Hunter, bottom out and try to get a quarterback next year, even if you have to put a package in. So, because if you could at least be in the top five, it's easier to move from five to one. It's hard to move. Like Pittsburgh can't move to the number one pick. It's too big a gap, you know. If the Giants end, and let's say they have the fifth pick next year, let's just say you can make a package, couple first round picks, couple of second round picks, and get from five to one, and then draft your quarterback in the future that way. You don't want to be in purgatory, and I think Russell Wilson puts us at a better shot being in purgatory, which I don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. So it's fun when it's just Jameis Winston throwing a bunch of picks, being fun,
Yeah,
being our starting quarterback, and we have a rookie right behind him. But then you do the Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston combination. It's like, this team's not going to be so bad. This team's going to at least win 8 games.
yeah,
And there you go. Just like you said, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 21st pick, and they're bottom end of the top 10 every year just
exactly.
because they have good coaching and they have a good defense and a good organization, but they're not getting to that next level. Like the last time the Giants won their division,
Mhm.
2011, 14 years ago. They've only made it to the playoffs twice since then. They won the Super Bowl that
Yeah.
year,
So that's a good
but
sign.
they haven't won the division in 14 years. And this is a division that you never have a repeat winner. Like it's
That's
almost
true.
guaranteed the Washington Commanders are going to win basically next year, which I
Yeah.
can't fully, say they won't, but it's just how this division works.
No, I agree with you. I mean, and like Phillies, you can be the best and not even a division one. I feel like Philly could be the best team and not lose division because you had that little Super Bowl hangover. I know you don't you speak Super Bowl hangover and loser, but even still, sometimes the winner a little beat up, a little tired, mentally not as focused. So I see a scenario where Philly, this is off topic, that's your team, goes like 11 and Washington plays, better than they are, I guess 12 wins or 11 for them and 9 and 10 for Philly. I could see that scenario happening. So it's like Boston is really the best team in the East in NBA, but the Cavs have the best record. Sometimes that happens. So in this division particularly, to be at the bottom for so long like the Giants have, it's painful and embarrassing. But the problem is I don't know if I can trust our GM now because we had Gettleman who was just terrible. I'm sorry, he's just terrible. Like you have the yeah, you have Daniel Jones, then you have the Daniel Jones double down on the contract with him. You have Barkley who went second, and Barkley looks amazing and all in Philly. But we drafted Barkley with bottom three offensive line, which at that point is just a waste of talent. So like I feel like that was actually a blown pick. Not that he's a bad player, obviously he's amazing. Look at the Super Bowl, but like that was a bad pick for us at the time. We needed a quarterback desperately. So
Yeah, the
yeah.
Barkley thing. That's why actually one of the most intriguing things about this draft is the two running backs. And these
Mhm.
are two of the best running backs we've seen in a long time. But still, we've been devaluing running
Mhm.
backs. But then all of a sudden, the Eagles signed the best running back in the NFL, or at least one of them. Derrick Henry never gets old. He's always going to compete for that title. But, you always want to copy whoever just won the
Yes.
league, right? So the Eagles won because they signed Saquon Barkley. That's not the actual reason, but that's the biggest change they made. They've been drafting consistently. They got Cooper DeJean this year. They got Jalen Carter a couple years ago. Like they keep drafting very well, similar to the Los Angeles Rams, but they won title wise, headline wise, because they signed Saquon Barkley and nobody wanted to pay him that. So all of a sudden now we have Ashton Genty, right?
Hmm.
Ashton
Yeah.
Genty and Hamilton out of North Carolina. Right?
Yeah. I mean, running back is
People
back.
said those
Running back
guys
back.
are two of the best ever. And Todd McShay's top 150. Now this is prospects. This is ranking prospects, not the mock draft.
Hmm.
Two of the top 10 running backs. That's pretty impressive. And he said, I think 15 of the top 30 are edge, defensive linemen. Like
Hmm.
this is a massive defensive lineman draft.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if I'm talking just for us by us, I mean Giants fans,
Oh,
defensive
please, I
line
want to
is
focus on the Giants.
defensive line is probably our best or defense front seven call, linebackers together in that. So it's like you don't want to be in a draft where you have what is being given to you, like we need quarterbacks. There's a weak quarterback draft. So in that sense, it's bad for us. I do feel like saying what you're saying that this is the running back is back. And even Josh Jacobs, he was the other big offset, another big offseason. He was like number three on a regular year. He would have been the biggest running back pickup, and he was like third best because the running backs were definitely back. You look at even some drafts recently. Look at the Lions had a great year and they got that Gibbs who really took over when Montgomery went down. And you could see, oh wow, this guy's really good. Like I think the running backs are coming back, and we're pulling back to the mean. We had running backs being devalued, receivers going higher, higher. But you produce so many receivers now out of college that they're just easier to replace. Almost like how people used to be like, oh, just pick up any running back. And now having a good running back puts you in an elite category. There's like very few people have those true elite running backs. Maybe half a dozen teams have a true third down back, three down back.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Giants definitely could use a running back. Devin Singletary is their main guy, and they don't have any of it. I mean, I do like Tracy
Yeah,
though. I like
I
Tracy
like
a
him.
lot.
I'm hoping there's
But
something there.
they're not. That's not the strength of their team. But just like you're saying, like Dexter Lawrence, like he's their best player, right? Am I wrong there? Like
Yeah,
he's
and then
got to be at least.
arguably him, or you could say that the linebacker was Brian. I think Brian Burns is it.
Brian Burns.
Yeah, like
Brian
that's
Burns actually
yeah,
gets paid more.
yeah.
This year is going to be making 30 million,
So
and then Dexter Lawrence is going to be making 24 million.
between the two of
So
them, that's their
they're
best
paying
spot.
big money toward their big boys. They're not really putting a lot of their money on the offense right now. Neighbors is only making 6 million because he's a rookie. That's going to be a paycheck. What was it? We brought up last podcast. Higgins and Chase combined for 225 million or 275 million,
Yeah,
something outrageous. That's over the next 4 years, but still, that's you know close to $100 million for two wide receivers, while the Giants have $12 million going to their top two wide receivers.
yeah.
Obviously, the talent is so different. But then if you compare, you brought up the
Philly.
Eagles. So if we pull up Philly, they got 22 million for Hurts,
Yeah, and they got
and Barkley's getting 7 million this year. They always defer late. They're so smart with
well,
this. It's so wild.
here's an interesting thing I think for Philly. If you take
Go for
AJ
it.
Brown and Smith
Yeah.
and you compare it to Chase and Higgins, it's still Philly is spending less money if you add in Saquon. So basically, what I'm saying is if you take their weapons, say Barkley, Smith, and Brown is about the same amount of money as Chase and Higgins. And we just spoke about how running backs are. So would you rather have a not the best wide receiver duo? I think we could pretty much agree at Cincinnati right now. But if you take a top five wide receiver duo and the best running back, and you're getting it at the same price as I'd rather that than have just the best duo.
Totally. And is Joe Burrow twice as good as Hurts?
No,
You know,
yeah, the
not
contract is
now.
similar, but definitely not twice as good.
Joe Burrow's the man. Trust me, I'm one of the biggest Joe Burrow fans. But just like you're saying, next year specifically,
Mhm.
Saquon, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, $32 million. T. Higgins next year,
Not bad.
24. Chase, 24.
There you go.
Just
So,
one player. Yeah, and then it's gonna be 26 each, 30 each, 33.
mm,
They're Higgins is basically making exactly what Chase makes, which is kind of wild. It's the market. It's I think they made a mistake with T. Higgins. I do love T. Higgins, and I was actually talking about Clemson wide receivers today because I was talking to some guy, big college football fan. And I'm actually curious with you because I'm not a big college football fan. Not that I ever was, but I definitely am less interested every year with college football.
mhm.
And we were talking about why Clemson has the ability to actually do well this year. And Texas is pretty much the clear favorite. But, Clemson used to be really good at getting these wide receivers. They got Hopkins back in the day. They got T. Higgins most recently. And then it correlated to me. I'm like, can you believe how much money T. Higgins is getting? I'm
Mhm.
like, he's definitely one of the best in the game, but $24 million, like that's a pretty penny for this guy. Wouldn't you rather like beef up your O line a little bit? I mean, they
Yeah.
got Orlando Brown. He's the fourth most expensive player on their team, but
Mm.
their center, fifth most expensive player on their team. Their guard, seventh most expensive player on their team. So I guess I'm wrong. They are putting money into the O line, but
Well,
clearly there's no defense right here. You go down the line, nobody on defense. Keep
well,
going. Like,
it's
it's ridiculous.
it's not just money. It's performance, which isn't always 100% lined up. And like Philly is Harry Roseman the best GM in the NFL? I think he's got a strong argument. If he's not best, he's top two, top three. So he's getting better deals and he's making smarter plays because I can do the same thing as you, but I can do it worse. And let's take Cincinnati here because that's what we're talking about. I'm not saying signing Higgins or Chase or both was bad. They just did it wrong. They signed them late. If they had signed them 2 years ago, which they could have, their contracts would have been closer to AJ Brown and Smith. And you know what? Maybe they would have had enough money to keep Joe Mixon, who, by the way, had a pretty good year, has probably the fourth best running back that traded. If you look at musical chairs of running backs. He had a pretty solid year. they had to let him go. Why? Because they didn't have the money. If they had signed Chase when they should have and Higgins when they should have, they would have been signing those guys at about 5 to 10 million each less, and they would have had what's that? Enough money for a good running back, such as Mixon in this case, who they literally got rid of because they couldn't afford. Those things, it all matters. They signed the right players, but they signed them so late that they had to overpay them, and now they're all top number one receiver in money. Chase Higgins is up there, and they could have been way lower, like 5 to 10 million each lower. That's not going to be seen necessarily if you don't pay attention because you'll just say, well, they signed him, but they signed him poorly, so to say, it's at a bad time because they're like trying to figure out, do we keep him, do we not? They're debating. Sometimes they say no action is worse than the wrong action. If because let's say the best action was signing him early, right? And let's say you could say the worst action was letting him go. Well, no action is actually the worst action because if you let him go, but you let him go earlier, then that would have been trading, say, Higgins 2 years ago when you could have gotten a second round pick in return, maybe a second and a third, like something high. They ended up in the in between ground. So, even those moves are just the Bengals are not doing great. I'm happy to spending money because they used to just not spend, but the GM is still like not great.
Yeah, they're definitely not good. I mean, to clarify though, my point before, Trey Hendrickson does make a lot of money. He makes 18 million a year, but outside of him, they really aren't paying their defense at all. And that's not a recipe to win. Just like you were saying though, we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, they got to pay Micah Parsons next year. He's a free agent next year, or you got to let him go. But, when you put $50 million into Dak Prescott, just like you're saying that like limbo area, like he's a mediocre quarterback. I guess you should, give him some money, but like I feel guys like him that aren't locked in top five are going to eventually not get paid the big dollar. But maybe I could be wrong because like Kirk Cousins is the definition of a mediocre quarterback and he gets paid constantly. He's always getting these massive deals. So I feel like at the end of the day, people are so desperate for quarterbacks. And that's why when you trade up in the draft, you almost have to pay an extra superior tax. Like it's almost this like wedding tax. Like you're like, oh, I'm planning a wedding and I need to host this, in this area. And the guy hears that. I was like, okay, I'll add 10% because I know there's emotions attached
Sure.
to that. It's like the same with these GMs. They know you're trading up just to, move up in the draft to get a quarterback. So they're like, you got to pay extra for it. And I feel like the theme of this podcast so far has been about money allocation.
Hmm.
How, and that's why I like the nerdy stuff. Like we're the nerdy sports. We look to give you the little details. And that's why I'm pulling up Spot Rack and figuring out the cap hit and looking and reminding myself that freaking Deshaun Watson is costing his team $36 million this year, then $80 million the next year. You can't do anything with that.
No,
Your team is done. That's why Myles Garrett's like begging to leave, but then all of a sudden they pay him. It's like, oh, I kind of like it here anyway. It's like, no, you like the money, buddy. And hey, I'll take it too. I mean, what is he going to make? It's definitely some fat dollars. Yeah, 23, then 24, then 29, then 31. It's a lot for a defensive
sure.
end. I mean,
But
he is the best.
you mentioned the Cowboys. They've been going
Yes.
back and forth negotiating with Parsons forever, and now they're going to have to pay him more than Garrett when they could have paid him cheaper. But they've been going back and forth. What seems like it's got to be close to 2 years from when they first could have signed him. I'm not saying they should have 2 years ago, although a lot of people would say they should have. I think that was the first chance they had. And with each year, he's continued to put up stats, and the contract, the price is going up. It's going up. It's going up. You know, you want to be first to act, first movers. Even if you make the bad decision, like I said, at least then you made the bad decision sooner. So it's like, say I'm driving a car, I make a left when I should have made a right. Well, by making a left immediately instead of just driving straight and not picking left or right, then I know to make a U-turn and head the other direction. If I keep going straight,
Sure.
I'm not sure which way I'm going. You know,
Yeah.
so
And you keep going in the wrong
exactly.
direction
I'm
constantly.
yeah. Let's say if I'm going straight up north from Texas and I need to go to New York, well, if I have no idea where I
Yeah,
am,
that's a great
you
point.
know,
I was talking to my
exactly.
girlfriend about this today. So I feel like when I get flustered, sometimes I like continue to drive and I'm trying to like speak to text and all this, trying to like scramble and I have too many things on my mind. But in reality, if I just pull over, breathe, look at what I need to do, I'm saving so much time, so much mental taxing energy too. And that's what these
Yeah.
teams have to do. Like Todd McShay and all these NFL, draft prospect guys, they always talk about these GMs overthink it and they like, they feel like Howie Roseman, the
Mhm.
Eagles, they just They keep the main thing the main thing. They
Yeah.
know what their focus is, and they like build toward a specific goal.
Hmm.
Like if you look at the Bengals, their money is clearly in those three guys. So they care about their passing offense. They're like, we're going to win by scoring 50 points a game. The Eagles are like, all right, we're winning with like a balanced roster and great defensive line, great offensive line, and just keeping it simple, not making big mistakes.
Exactly.
Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, what are you doing? You have CeeDee Lamb, sure, and Micah Parsons. It's a fantasy team. They're always a fantasy team.
Hmm.
They're not like an actual well-built organization. I mean,
Hmm.
trying to figure out when the last time this team even did well.
30
Like
years ago.
yeah, right. Honestly,
Yeah, I
I mean,
believe
they're the
this year will
12th
be
pick in the draft now, which is not good enough. And they have one of their worst seasons. It's just not good enough. You don't want to be in that 10 to 20.
no,
Like you don't. I'd rather be, the Commanders, the Bills, or the Giants and the Patriots. I would.
exactly.
I would rather
Exactly.
be the Giants than the Cowboys right now because at least they have good draft prospects,
And
and
now with Daniel Jones gone, they don't have a glaring, terrible contract. The Cowboys have arguably two and a third on the way. I'm saying contract, not player. So we know Dak is a terrible contract. Not a terrible player, but for
yeah,
his
50
listen,
million for
even though arguably their best player is CeeDee Lamb, and I wouldn't say it's a terrible contract, but it's not a great contract. They paying him top of the mark, and he's a probably top five receiver, but he's definitely not the number one receiver, and he's being paid, I think, number two now besides Chase. So, and they could have had him again for it was I think around they did the numbers about 4 million cheaper if they signed him a year earlier. I don't remember exactly what top of the mark was at the time, but I believe it was about 4 million less. It was like 31 million. Now he's at like 35. They're gonna pay Micah Parsons number one, which we know could have been it easily just 3 or 4 million left just less than a month ago before for Garrett, and probably I don't have off the top of my head if they signed him 2 years ago when they first could have, they could have had him for something like 10 million less than they're going to pay because they're going to pay him eventually. Jerry Jones, all of his contracts have something in common. He waits till the very, very last minute and then makes an announcement, highest paid player ever, because it's like cool press. You're the highest paid player ever. And I was speaking about make the quick decision, even if it's not right. You look at your Eagles, Super Bowl champions. We like to use Super Bowl champions as the example. I look at their coaches. As now they did have Andy Reid for a long time, but it's like they get Chip Kelly, they move off him very quickly. You could have kept him for another season. He had won like 10 games. He has a slightly down season at six. Like, boom, gone. Doug Peterson, Super Bowl. Starts to flounder, boom, gone. Quarterbacks. They get Carson Wentz. Looks like he has a borderline MVP season before he get injured. They're like, yeah, we're moving on. We got another one. And they're preparing themselves. So they draft another quarterback, Hurts, in the second round because they're like, all right, we always got to keep a backup, like somebody like a round in the chamber. Like, we're just going to keep moving with this decision because we're going to keep acting first. Even if it's the wrong decision, we'd rather act first and just we can keep moving this ball forward.
that's a great point. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's making 15 this year, but then he's making 38, then 42. It's escalating quickly.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
team could crumble. And they were 12-5 making the playoffs the previous three seasons before last year. But still, if you speak to any Cowboys fan, they almost didn't even appreciate those. They're like, all right, we're winning in the regular season, but we're going to fall apart in the playoffs. It's almost like kind of how the Houston Rockets were with James Harden,
Mhm.
or right now how the Ravens are. Sadly, they're like incredible, but nobody is giving Lamar Jackson the credit to be able to get to the, championship or the AFC championship because he drops the ball in the playoffs. I hate to say these guys can't do it, but like you always say, show me.
Mhm.
Show me you could do it. Show me in the playoffs. Show me you elevate. Like Jimmy Butler elevates in the playoffs. The Warriors beat the Lakers last night. They're looking incredible. People are talking about the Lakers potentially winning the NBA championship. You know, you got to have these big boy players. But with the NFL, it's not really about your top guys. You need to have depth. You need depth. You need backups. Injuries are going to happen. And with the Bengals and the Cowboys, you're so heavy with just a couple of guys that it's not helping you build a all in roster, a full deep roster. You can't do it. They're just
Absolutely.
garbage fires right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You need depth. The NFL is an injury sport, and that's why going all the way back to the beginning, I don't mind the Giants having drafting a quarterback, even though they already have a couple on their roster, because quarterbacks get injured. And what's the worst case? Say you draft Sanders, somebody gets an injured quarterback, and you could trade Wilson or Winston and probably pick up like a fifth round pick. And you basically, let's say you traded Winston to somebody that loses their quarterback, and you get a fifth round pick for it. that was basically buying a fifth round pick for 3 million. That's a great deal. Having extra quarterbacks is always a good spot to be in because there's always going to be one or two teams in a season that's going to lose their quarterback either preseason or like week, say 1 through 5 when it's still early enough that you're like, I need my quarterback, and you always have trade bait. So there's that. So I have no problem having extra quarterbacks on the roster, and that's why we should draft a quarterback. Act first, as fast. If it doesn't work out, draft another one next year. Just keep going. We can't sit just on doing nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that totally makes sense. I feel like this has been a really heavy NFC East podcast, and we're trying to break down the Cowboys, the Giants, the Eagles. We've touched on the Commanders a little bit,
Hmm.
but I feel like they were one of the biggest surprises of last year, making it to the NFC Championship game, doing it with a rookie quarterback. But it does set you up for greatness for the next couple of years because they do have a good coach, and people definitely have a lot of faith in Jaden Daniels. I mean, he's composed for a guy that's as old as he is.
Very
And the
comfortable.
fact that you're only paying this guy, I mean, I'll have to scroll super far down. I think he's $8 million. Yeah, $8.5 million this year. Like that's a steal. The fact that you're not spending all this money on your quarterback allows you the ability to pay big boys, throughout the rest of your team. And they pretty much brought in so many new guys. I mean, Bobby Wagner, Marshawn Lattimore, they've been paying these guys to come out,
Yeah,
and,
they
and
just got
create
Debo.
some distance between them and the bottom of the NFC East. Right now they're pushing the Cowboys down, and not hopefully, but from their standpoint, hopefully they can keep the Cowboys from being that 12-5 team again. That's what they have to hope for. Sadly, I mean, I don't think you really disagree with this, but I don't think the Giants have a lot of capabilities of
No.
doing that well. But
Well,
honestly, you actually were saying they may win 7 games or so.
I'll tell you as much. Obviously, like best case scenario to me as a Giants fan is they would draft Sanders. I'm just saying Sanders because I'm assuming Cam's going number one. If for some reason he didn't go number
Yeah,
one, but we're pretty upset on that.
not
And
Cam
is
Scott.
it possible that the Giants can get to fight for that 7 seed? I'm gonna say yes, because as crazy as that sounds, if you just look at the last couple of years, just the Texans and the Commanders, nobody thought they could compete for a playoff spot, and they get a rookie quarterback that has a monster year. So if your rookie quarterback has a monster year, and we can't say that Sanders can't do that just because his grade is drafted lower, that was what the second quarterback's drafted, then you can go from, 3 wins to 8 or 9 in a year. We've literally seen it done back to back years. So, and hindsight's 2020. We look at it and we say, look what they did. Look what these did. Do we forget how bad? Look at the Texans 2 years ago. They weren't just their roster was looked at terrible. And people were even talking about from ownership, like, oh my God, this is such a dumpster fire. Now we've immediately just forgot about that short-term memory. Redskins similar, like was those guys, oh my God, this is terrible. And now suddenly like, oh wow, that's a great team. So when you're going especially from really, really bottom three quarterbacks, and that's what the Giants have had for 3 years in a row. If you go to 15th best, you don't have to have an amazing quarterback. The jump, that's when you go from say 3 wins to 8 wins because on top of it, you have your last place schedule, and like I said, the jump from that bottom garbage quarterback to just good quarterback can be 4 or 5 wins, 3 to 8 wins. That's 5 win difference. You can do that, and if the ball bounces right for you, the last place schedule, you find yourself fighting for that now additional wild card 7, and especially in the NFC, which is a little easier. Like, yeah, you can theoretically compete. I'm not saying I think it's going to happen, but it does seem to happen. It's just like every year there's at least one team that goes from last to first, and I don't think that's the Giants at all because the Eagles are too good. And every year on average, it's I believe 4 to 6 new playoff teams. Well, they have to come from somewhere. And I'm not saying the Giants can make the playoffs. I'm just saying I wouldn't say that everybody is in that race for that going from back in the playoffs. It's like after I watched the last 2 years, the Texans 2 years ago, I thought no way, no way. Especially C.J. Stroud coming from Ohio, where they have not been able to produce Ohio State good quarterbacks. I'm like, they're not going to be good. They win the division. Like anything is possible when you draft a quarterback. When you draft another position, it is even if you get Travis Hunter's amazing. What would be amazing? Would it be Sauce Gardner, Patrick Sedan? When they were drafted, did they take their teams to the playoffs? No, because even if you're a top flight corner, you can't move the needle on your team like that. Only your quarterback can.
That's why Jay Daniels was the best pick last year because he's a
Exactly.
quarterback, because he's a difference maker. Doesn't matter who you got, all these guys, Lattimore, Bobby Wagner, sure, impact guys, but they're not the reason they're in the NFC Championship game. They're there because of Jaden Daniels. They're there because his connection with Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin was there with a bunch of garbage quarterbacks, but once Jaden Daniels came, that was a difference maker. Once Patrick Mahomes got drafted by the Chiefs, that was the difference maker. You need these big boys, but they're just it's so hard to figure it out. Just like you're saying, like, I do think Cam Ward's the best guy,
Hmm.
but who knows? You really don't know this. And if you break down how we opened up the podcast, we were talking about the Giants actually being in like mediocre land, right? That like 7-8 win.
Hmm.
But then all of a sudden we're talking about the rest of the NFC East, reminding ourselves that the Cowboys were recently 12-5 each year, and they were 7-10 last year. Reminding ourselves that the Eagles have been super consistent, winning 10 games a year constantly. Reminding ourselves that the Commanders, we do think are going to still be able to be good, and still had a great year last year. So somebody has to lose games. And in this division, it is the Giants. So their
Exactly.
projection is 5.5 wins. How we opened the podcast, I was like, yeah, they could totally cover that. But like, let's break down each team and the over unders, and then we could close out the pod.
Sure.
Do you
So
feel
like
like they
NFC East or
realistically are
just
going to
like
cover
everybody?
and get 6 wins?
I mean, for the Giants particularly, I think
For the Giants.
you cannot answer that question before the draft because if they draft a quarterback, that changed everything. And we know the other three teams are not drafting quarterbacks, so it's easier to guess on them. Because we don't know if they're drafting a quarterback, it's so hard to answer that question. I think if they draft Sanders, I think I'm going to be super wishful thinking. I'm going to say they do. I think they can get 6 or more wins with a new quarterback. Without
But he's not going to
Sanders,
start. He's not going to be an impact for this year. Russell Wilson's going to start, maybe lose the job, and then Jameis Winston's going to come in. So Sanders isn't going to be an impact for this year. That's why I think they should go for like a second, third round quarterback. Get
interesting.
Travis Hunter. Get a better player.
I think they can get to 6 wins this year because I mean 6 is not exactly impressive. Let's not. I'm not saying they're going to be good here, but they do have a last place
Their
schedule.
projection.
They got a last place schedule that matters.
Yep, it does.
If let's just say they go with Wilson, Wilson is still going to be an upgrade from what I had quarterback last year. So they have an upgrade quarterback last year, and their defense. Let's say they go Travis Hunter, and people have him. A lot of people have him graded number one or number two, depending. But I think I've seen more number one. So let's just call him the best player in the draft. If he's a shutdown corner, you have a strong defensive line. You have Neighbors as a top wide receiver. The rest of their weapons, Tracy looks pretty good. Hopefully, I could see them getting 6 wins because I think the gap from where their quarterback play was last year, multiple quarterbacks, to this year. I mean, like I said, they won 3 games last year. I believe it was three, but I mean, they had Tommy DeVito start some games. They had Drew Lock, like Jones in the beginning. Like, I think 6 is doable. Like, and it really is because that gap from 32nd quarterback play to even 20th to me could be 3 wins. That's all you're asking to do. You're going to say, can I go from 3 to 6? So I think they could on a last play schedule. I think yeah, they could do it.
Happens all the time. It's definitely realistic. I think 6 is a great projection for them. I don't see a reason why they can't do that. But with the Cowboys, I feel like they're going to have another 7-10 season. Their projection is 8.5 wins, lose the over under, Vegas wise. And I feel like we'll redo this after the draft, before the NFL season. It's only April 3rd right now. The draft is in 3 weeks.
Hmm.
But I feel like the Dallas Cowboys, but they haven't changed anything.
Hmm.
And I don't see them actually doing better, especially with such a hard division.
For the Cowboys, yeah, I would go with the under. I think 8. I know you said 7, but you said the number it's 8.5. So I think
Eight
they
and
could
a
do
half,
8.
yeah.
So
So you got it covered.
I think 8 they don't hit it. 7 sounds right to me too, but even again 8 still doesn't catch it. So I'd say probably 8-ish. I'm just gonna be. I was gonna say 7. You said 7. I'll be kind. I'll give them 8. So I'm gonna say they don't cover.
They did cover the last 3 years, those 12-5
True,
seasons.
true.
But obviously last year they didn't do that,
Hmm.
with the 7-10. Yeah, I mean, I think they're a 7-win team. I feel the strongest about their under in terms of any other, projection within this division. And then you have second place potentially, the Washington Commanders. Their over under is 10.5 wins. Personally, I think that's a little aggressive. I think they could easily make the playoffs.
Hmm.
And obviously they were just, if you look at the stock market for them,
Yeah,
it started off pretty low and then it jumped really high. And how many times is a team like that going to continue to go all the way up? Like they're probably
sure.
crashing back down a little bit. I think they gotta be a little worse. And now we're talking about them winning 2 less games. They were 12-5 last season. I think this is an 8-9 win team. even though we keep talking about the
Oof.
goodness and all the good stuff, but like they're not an elite team in my eyes.
Okay. This one is arguably the toughest one, I think. I think that'd be fair to say it's the toughest one to pick.
Yeah.
It's not because you mentioned about pulling back. Last year, the two most popular teams to pick were the Texans and the Packers for like, oh, they're young, they're going up. Both of them pulled back. Both had worse seasons in overall wins. And I believe the Texans did the same depth in the playoff, one playoff win and then a blowout loss. And the Packers didn't even go as far. They lost in the first round. So both of them pulled back. So that goes to your point of like, oh, that called sophomore slump, if you will. A little bit of, oh, they pulled back a little bit. And I'm not saying that's all on the quarterbacks there, Love and Stroud, but there is definitely,
Well,
you could see a history for pullbacks.
so the Packers were 11-6 last year. The
Mhm.
Texans were 10-7. They
Yeah.
both are projected. Well, their over/under is 9.5 wins this season. I don't think they were that bad.
No, but
They're in
like
that same
people were
zone as like the
projecting that,
Steelers.
you talk stock market,
I think the
they were
Steelers are a little
projecting that
worse.
bump. I'm not
The
saying they
bump.
did
Yeah.
bad,
Okay. Okay. I feel
but
what you're
like,
saying. Just
yeah,
the young
yeah,
quarterback, the
because
Jordan
they did
Love, the
so
CJ
well as a
Stroud.
young quarterback, a lot of people were picking them to win like 12, 13 games, make deep playoff runs.
Oh,
So I'm saying
yeah. I
that the,
forgot
the
that.
bump, it was like a stock that you invested in. It kind of just stayed around the same. Like people were expecting that 20% return or more, something like that.
Uh-huh.
So for Washington, this is the toughest one of them all. I feel like they're probably right at, I think Vegas got this right. Like they're at 10 or 11 to me. I'm gonna say they can do 11. I'm being a little optimistic with them right, because I do think they're going to get wins against Dallas and my Giants. So I do think getting wins there is going to help. So they might go 4-0 between there. I think they split with Philly last year. I know that it was a cheating game, not cheating, sorry, but like Kenny Pickett came in, Jalen Hurts got hurt, so it was like a whole thing. But I think they can get 11 wins for Washington. You said the line was it 10.5 or 11.5? What's the line?
10.5. Yeah.
So I think they can just cover at 11.
There's
So I'm
only
gonna,
four teams projected higher than them. Like more wins.
sure.
So the top four teams are pretty clear. I'm sure you can guess who they are.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
They're
compare it
projected
to other
for
teams
11.5.
because this is NFC is generally weaker. So you're trying to look at, okay, can they beat up on some more NFC teams? Although they have a tougher schedule this year. So I'm gonna say they can squeeze out 11, but I'm
Would
not
you pick the
confident in that.
Lions over them? Because the Lions, so they're
Whew.
they're they're packed right now. There's a lot of I think maybe not only make it an NFC East podcast, but because I feel like the weirdest over under is a
Mhm.
team right above them
Good.
who also is 10.5, the San Francisco 49ers, the team that's losing everybody right now, the team that still has Brock Purdy. Like, I don't know where these 11 wins are coming from. I feel like the easiest bet in sports is the under here, which Vegas must know something.
Yeah, that I was about to say that
They were
that feels
6 and
like a
11 last year, Scotty.
that
I'm
feels
fucking
like a
losing my mind.
it feels like a trap bet. Normally we think trap
Right?
bets for like single games, but exactly I was thinking when you were saying, you say Vegas must own up to like Vegas can't be that off that I would never bet the over on that. The under seems like
Right.
such an obvious bet that you find yourself double guessing it, double checking everything. Like, what am I missing here? What does Vegas know that I don't know? Because like, yeah, I mean, I think the Rams are at this point clearly the better team. There was like the transition period was
Yeah.
last year where the Rams passed them. A lot of people liked the Rams last year, but it was still, Niners are coming off a Super Bowl loss. They're looking good. The Rams are clearly better. Like, I mean, the one thing they do have going for them is Arizona is looking like they don't really know what they're doing. They're like a rudderless ship. So you're gonna have a couple games against Arizona. So, that's gonna help you. And they'll have an easier schedule this year because of last year. But I mean, McCaffrey, running backs can fall quick. With his leg injuries, I don't wish this at all. He could take a step back. They traded away some of the backup running backs there. The running back room, I question, what do you get from Brock Purdy? Like the team is older, they cut players. Yeah, I think you have to go under, but man, this feels like a trap that I'd almost not want to touch it. It feels like just stay away from betting because something I can't imagine Vegas is this off. They have to know something I don't know. So that's why I
It's
almost
just
want to stay
such a
away.
jump. So they're saying they're a top 10 team. There are four teams with an 11.5 over under. There are six teams with 10.5 over under. So that's the top 10. They're projecting to have 10 or 11 or more wins. That's San Francisco 49ers right now. Sure, if you asked me this last year, Christian McCaffrey, there's a lot going on. It started to have that inkling of like the Brandon Ayuk like signing deal that was like, you're reminding me a lot of Dallas. You're reminding me a lot of Cincinnati. I don't like where this is going. But I'm like, I trust John Lynch. I
Yeah, I
trust
do. I do. Of
Shanahan.
course.
Then all of a sudden, the way that season went, are they really projecting them to be that stock market team from going like to 11-6 back to, 12 wins? Like I guess. I feel like almost the lock of the year is the fact that we're going to be wrong and they're somehow going to win 12 games. I don't see it though. I mean, if you compare the rest of the teams, you got San Francisco 49ers,
Okay.
Washington Commanders, LA Rams, LA Chargers, Detroit Lions, Cincinnati Bengals. That's
Mhm.
the cluster, those 6 teams. For me, it's like obviously they're the worst of those teams.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing they have going for them as compared to, say, like Detroit's in arguably the toughest division. So, they won 15 games last year. I feel like they have to take a pullback. A lot of people are going to say that too. They lost both coordinators. As a Philly fan, you have that one down year in between. You got Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl win. The down year, what happened? You lose two coordinators. So the brain drain there is going to pull back the Lions. So I do worry. They'll definitely make the playoffs, but I think the Lions take a pretty big step back just because you have to respect coaching. We talk about coaching in the offseason, then the regular season starts, and we don't talk about it, particularly on coordinators. We're talking about. So I think the Lions are going to take a step back with that division being so tough, but that doesn't mean that the Niners can cover their line. I don't think so.
They were 15-2 last year. If they take a step back, that's still an incredible season.
Yeah, well, they'll definitely make the playoffs for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped all the way to 10.
This is the best I've ever seen them. This is the best Lions team ever.
Sure, for unless
My
you're.
35 years of life.
Exactly. I was gonna say you'd have to be a very old man to have seen them better than this. So
Yeah. Barry Sanders was at like 93,
yeah,
something like
and
that. Yeah. Like and even that, like
it
they were
wasn't
good.
necessarily a better
He was
team.
good.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
great.
he
That
was
doesn't
good.
mean the team was better necessarily. So
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
if you think about that division, actually the Vikings are some of one of the craziest stories. The fact that Sam Darnold has such a great season. They were projected 6.5 wins last year. I looked this
Hmm.
up earlier. Last year, 6.5.
Yeah.
That was the over under.
They get
Then they
14.
won 14-3, blew it open.
Hmm.
They have JJ McCarthy. They draft him. Then they have Sam Darnold. They're like, I don't want to pay him this money. We're good. We can let him go. We love JJ. Clearly, they like JJ. They like what they've seen. He's a rookie quarterback that got injured, never played in the NFL yet, but they are willing to put all their eggs in that basket. And now
Well,
their over under is a little higher than last year, but still only 8.5. They're not even projecting this team to be a top 10 team.
okay, we can connect that to earlier in this podcast because JJ McCarthy was rated according to the big board and the people that rate him. They said he's a higher prospect than Sanders or Cam Ward would be if they were in the same draft. So
Okay.
that's really it's almost the equivalent of is the Vikings had the number one pick this year and drafted McCarthy number one because they're saying that McCarthy would have gone number one, Cam Ward two, Sanders three. So they're hoping that okay, well we have a great quarterback and I'll have some faith in them because they saw him like then they've been talking about all offseason, they've seen the preseason. So you have to be thinking to yourself, okay, they have to have some insight of like what this guy can do. Kind of like when Jordan Love was under wraps forever, and you're like, is he good? Is he not? Well, the team's got to know more than we know. It's watching, so they're hoping for
They
that.
watch them every day.
And on top of that, I was talking about that you're better off making the wrong decision. Talk about the Eagles make quick decisions. The Vikings are saying, as good as Sam Darnold is this going to be Super Bowl championship? Probably not. Would rather find out we got a rookie on a deal. We can build around him on a cheap contract, that rookie deal. And if it fails, then we'll restart again. But we don't want to just stay where we were last year. And I'm not saying it was a bad spot. It was a bad ending, but 14 wins are good. But I do like their idea of like, okay, let's go try to see if this works. Build around a rookie. If it doesn't, then we'll draft another one. We'll move on.
They're a great team. I feel like the fact that they were able to get 14 wins last year
Mhm.
says a lot about what they have outside of
Yeah,
Sam Darnold.
for sure.
So I don't think McCarthy's going to be that big of a drop off. I mean, look, Sam Darnold hasn't really proven much outside that one season. So clearly it likely was a coaching thing.
Yeah, they were
So
very well
I got a
coached.
lot of faith in them. So that division clearly could be really good. I don't, as I was thinking, I'm like, is the NFC East the best, division in the league, But I don't think so. I think, the
Yeah,
Commanders and the Eagles, yeah, they went to the NFC Championship game, but that doesn't mean the whole division is the best. And that was also just last year.
yeah, every year is different. The Lions got terrible injury luck. Otherwise, if you're playing Madden with no injuries, the Lions might be the best team in the NFL. Like if you look at the beginning of the year when they were more healthy, they got beat to hell. Otherwise, I think they probably beat the Commanders and against the Eagles. I don't know, but at the healthy Lions team, much better team.
Yeah, the Giants are clearly still like a bottom five team.
Yeah, yeah,
But
definitely.
honestly, that may not be that bad. If they draft third again next year, that's not that bad.
Exactly.
That's how you build. So keep being low. I mean, the worst team according to the NFL over unders is the Cleveland Browns, 4.5 wins. Can't really argue with you there. Then at 5.5, we have the Titans, the Jets, the Giants, the Saints, the Raiders.
So, pullback teams, I'm looking at the bottom of the AFC playoffs. Pittsburgh and Denver, I think, are both teams that are poised to pull back. For Denver, I don't know if I fully love Bo Nix. He looked great last year, but because of his draft spot, because of where he was ranked, I need to see a little more. And the AFC is also so competitive. That division is so competitive. You have to think the Raiders are going to be better. I'm not saying going to be great. So I question the Broncos. And then you got Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin's streak is on the line. I know that it was on the line last year. It was like the first year where Vegas actually predicted them not make the playoffs. But I mean, they literally don't have a quarterback in house. Basically, they got all their hopes and dreams on Aaron Rodgers. And before we even mention his
They didn't even
ability,
get him yet.
he doesn't even. They didn't even get him. So if they get
So
him,
it's like a hearing his name.
and if they get him, uh, you guys, A, how good is he going to be? B, he could easily get injured. I mean, he's pretty old. So like, I would not want to be Pittsburgh today. And I say this as a team that I haven't made the playoffs. The Giants haven't made the playoffs in like 7 years. No, we made it with Dable a couple of years ago, but we've had bad luck, and Pittsburgh's making it every year. But if I'm a Pittsburgh fan, part of you almost wants to blow it up and restart. Like I'm gonna just keep going around this exact 9-win merry-go-round that always ends with a blowout loss in the playoffs. And that's the thing. Pittsburgh, I think it's 4 or 5 straight blowout playoff losses. Like not just losing playoffs, but plus 21-point losses.
Yeah, yeah. That is true. I mean, I guess they're that type of team that it really doesn't even matter how many games you win. Doesn't matter how good you are in the regular season. It's sort of like how I feel about the Memphis Grizzlies right now. I'm
Yeah.
like, 3 years ago, you were the second seed. I don't really care if you're barely going to make the playoffs now. I don't feel like John Morant's a guy that's going to be able to lead you to a championship.
Not
Same
too
with the
mature.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, they don't really have the guy yet. They literally have Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson, as we said before. They somehow, for betting odds, the Steelers have gone over their win total in 5 straight seasons and 9 of the last 11. So that's projected. They're probably going to still win 9 games, but I feel like, they gotta have a 7-win season eventually.
Yeah.
Tomlin is good, but I don't know. They don't have enough of a team.
No, and they're boring to watch, like because they're all defense. People want to see offense. You want to see more excitement. This is
Totally.
a boring team to
It's
watch.
got to be the Bengals thought process. They're like, let's just keep this fun. It's that new owner syndrome type of thing. It's what's wrong with the Phoenix Suns right now. They're like, all right, let's put all of our eggs in those 3 baskets, with
Yeah,
KD, Booker, and Beal. But when they don't get
yeah,
along, that doesn't work. But clearly Joe Burrow is like, pay my boys. I don't care how much it takes. You got to pay my guys, and we got to make sure $100 million goes to us.
yeah.
The 3 of us.
No, and yeah, better than it used to be for Cincinnati. Used to never spend money on anything, but they still got their issues. I don't know. It's going to be exciting. After the draft, I think the NFL is going to be really exciting. We're going to start slowly getting more into it. For now, we got the NBA playoffs are around the corner.
Absolutely.
What's fun about the NBA right now, I'm going to just move us over there, is that, well, in the West, because the East is not very fun right now, but in the West, you got those 6, 7 teams that it's like every night is like watching playoff basketball. But you got the average team has what, 6 games left, I think, about 6. And you feel like it's almost like watching a 6-game series because every game means so much to those teams, Houston, Memphis, LA, Denver, Clippers, Minnesota, that you could see the intensity that players are trying. And NBA fans, a lot of times they complain like players don't try enough for load management. Now that we're at the game, it's like every game matters so much. You really have to watch these games, and every game can move a team 1 or even 2 spots, depending if their opponent loses 3 spots in a single night. So it's crazy fun to watch right now. The West is giving us like an early playoffs just in the end of the regular season. So it's a lot of fun right now.
You damn right, baby. All right, let's close it off there. So we will be back, Nerdy Sports audience, for another podcast talking about the NBA playoffs. We're like 2 weeks away now. As Scotty mentioned, there's only 6 games left in the regular season. The Thunder are trying to close their season out with a 17-game win streak. Then I got 2 games against the Lakers. They're playing the Rockets tonight. There's a lot going on. I'm
So
really excited
fun.
about this Rockets season, even though, once again, I feel like they're that type of team. I don't care how many games you win in the regular season. I don't have faith in you in the playoffs until you can prove it. But when Jalen Green gets pulled by Ime Udoka with 5 minutes left in a crunch time game because he doesn't like the way this team's playing, that's not a leader. That's not a guy I could trust myself winning a championship with. At least right now, with where he is in his you know, maturity. All right. So follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube. Dave is still breaking down Severance, still breaking down The Amazing Spider-Man. I'm sure there's many other, TV shows he's looking to record. He was just talking to me this morning. He may be looking to go to a different podcast. Right now, we record in Riverside, and he's testing out another one. So we'll definitely
I
be back.
just saw the first episode of Daredevil Born Again. I'm not sure if Dave is doing that one too.
Daredevil, he's doing
Uh,
that one too.
I was pretty sure it was, but I just saw episode one, so I'm pretty far behind. I think they're at the seven. So yeah, no spoilers, but I definitely want to find myself being like, okay, I gotta watch the episode review of this to make sure I'm following everything correctly. But yeah, there's lots of good shows, lots to watch. A
Yeah,
lot of reviews.
he's also capturing Invincible season 3. But yeah, I saw
My
Daredevil.
favorite.
They did episode 1 and 2, you know, review, and I did watch the first episode. Honestly, that show's incredible. I even like it a lot more than the Netflix one.
Yeah,
I do.
and I
It's like
was,
darker and grittier and like more deep. It's less like comic books feel.
I'll be honest, I was skeptical, like of them coming from because I did love the Netflix ones. I was like, is
Me
Disney
too.
gonna? I thought it was gonna. I was so worried it was gonna go the opposite. Like it was gonna be way more lighthearted. Like I was like, oh, they're gonna make this lighthearted. I'm not gonna enjoy it as much. So I was shocked at how dark and gritty it was. I was like, okay,
I
this
mean,
is what
for
I want.
Disney
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah,
I agree with you there. That's incredible.
yeah.
Good for
So
them.
yeah, I'm like, okay, you got my faith back a little bit. I'm feeling it. I'm like, okay, I'm getting more excited now for some things. I see Fantastic Four movie. I really want to see that. Enjoyed the latest Captain America, Brave New World. So I'm like, okay, I think we're turning the corner. Last year it was kind of, I felt like the bottom for Marvel. I feel like we're turning the corner back now. We're coming back.
Yeah, I know you're excited for the summer too.
Very, very. I was never been a huge Fantastic Four fan, but I saw the preview, which I know Dave broke down also. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this. I want to see this. I'm excited now. So I'm excited for the summer. I'm ready to get back on the Marvel bandwagon. I've seen every Marvel movie. I just feel like last year was probably their worst single year as the MCU, but I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm back.
no doubt about that. Yeah, well, all right. Nerdy Bunch got plenty of content for you guys to follow. All right, guys. So please join us again in 2 weeks. Scotty's going away next week, so we're gonna take a week off, but we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And as always,
Keep it dirty.